The Soldiers of Ares, Chapter 37. Odysseus was not a name you just never heard about. He was the man who ended the Trojan War. The entire Trojan horse was his idea. He was said to be one of the greatest strategic minds in the world and the current leader of Athena's army. The only thing that surpassed his skills as a warrior was his cunningness. Maximus had heard that though he did not visit the battlefield itself frequently, it was he who orchestrated all of Minerva's battle tactics. He was the brains behind the entire operation, and considering how well Athena's forces were keeping the much larger army of Ares at bay, Odysseus was doing his job pretty well. It took Maximus a few seconds to realize that he was staring with an open mouth at the general, and he quickly shook the hand offered to him after that. I guess you all already have an idea on who Odysseus is. You should also know that he is another member of the Omega-7, Achilles said. Then he turned to Odysseus and said, "These are Maximus, Hector, and Mia. The Minotaur inside is Rex. They have been a great help in reaching this far." Maximus was pretty sure Achilles could have made it even without their help, but he chose just to take the compliment. "In that case, you are all welcome to join us in Athens, but you might not want to mention to anyone you are from Mars," Odysseus said. "How did you know?" Maximus asked. "You still have your army dog tags. I saw one on your friend Rex as well." "I would suggest you remove those before entering the city," Odysseus said. Maximus nodded and went ahead to do so. Daedalus walked up to them now and said, "I see all of you have already gotten acquainted. You have already met my son Icarus, I suppose." Icarus nodded at them, but he didn't say anything. Maximus had a feeling he was not the very friendly type. One of the soldiers came out of the helicopter and said that Rex was stabilized, but that he still needed proper medical care as fast as he could. "Not to worry," Odysseus said. "My Phaeacian Pelican is one of the fastest copters in the world. It was a gift from the Phaeacian king to haste my return home from the Trojan War, and I have kept it up to date with the latest of Athenian technology. It will get us to Athens in under an hour." Maximus had to agree the helicopter was a real marvel to look at. It was 3 times the size of any ordinary helicopter, and it had a very futuristic design. The copter was gray and white, which kind of made it look like an angry storm cloud, and it had multiple guns and cannons on it. Its rotating blade was as long as the helicopter itself, and it had 2 smaller blades also. It also sprouted 2 wings that were short for the copter, but each one did hold 2 very large-looking missiles and a heavy machine gun at each end. It also had 4 very large jet exhausts in the back, so Maximus did not doubt what Odysseus said about its speed. The helicopter looked like it could take out multiple battalions without much trouble. They got onto the copter while one of the soldiers drove their truck into its cargo hold. The insides were pretty luxurious as well, and all of them could fit in easily. Once all of them, except Icarus, were inside, they took off, and the winged warrior followed them closely behind. Maximus went to sit next to Rex, who looked much better now. But he still hadn't regained his consciousness. They were flying through the air in no time, and Maximus had to admit, the Pelican was fast. Odysseus had let one of his soldiers drive so that he could join them in the back. They were all getting their wounds treated now. Maximus was the worst of the bunch, with multiple wounds and even a few broken ribs. Now that the fight was over and his adrenaline level had dropped back to normal, he could feel every bit of pain in his aching body. But he was no stranger to wounds or broken bones, and he knew he would be all right. Even Hector and Mia had some minor bumps and bruises. It seemed driving away from a pack of man-eating horses had been pretty rough. The only person who didn't seem to have a scratch on him was Achilles. He had removed his armor once he boarded the helicopter, and the armor had protected him from everything. The armor of Styx, true to its legend, really was invulnerable. Only his bionic leg had sustained some damage, and Achilles was trying not to move it much. But he looked really tired, and he had chugged down 2 bottles of water when he first entered. "So how did you find us anyway?" Achilles asked. Odysseus chuckled and said, "Don't think Ares is the only one who knows how to track someone. I had called up Ajax once I got back from the battlefront yesterday. He informed me that you had already left, but he did tell me the route you would be taking. And once I heard that an entire building had blown up in that route, I just put 2 and 2 together to figure out that you were involved. You always were a magnet for trouble." Achilles nodded to this, and Odysseus turned to the rest of them. "So you lot are from Mars, huh? Can't say I'm friends with a lot of people from there for obvious reasons," he said with a smile. "Actually, Mia here is not. But I think you are quite familiar with her home as well," Achilles said. Maximus did not understand what he was talking about, and judging by the expression on Odysseus, neither did he. Maximus realized that Mia hadn't uttered a single word since she met Odysseus, but she seemed to know what Achilles was talking about. She pulled up her sleeve again to reveal her mark of the candle with the burning sea and showed it to Odysseus. The smile vanished from his face immediately. It was replaced by an expression of pure shock and regret. "Oh, my poor child," he said. "How did you escape?" "I managed to sneak aboard one of the ships that brought in people. I hid in their cargo hold till I reached the mainland," she said in a low voice. There was sadness in Odysseus's eyes now. "We haven't had a refugee from there in quite the while now, and I hoped that the place had finally met its end somehow. The fact that it still survives is a matter of great personal shame to me." Maximus could feel the regret in his voice now. It took a few seconds, but Odysseus regained his composure and said, "Mia, I promise you that I will personally help you in any way I can. Please rest for now." He did not seem to be in a mood to talk anymore, and he excused himself to check something in the cockpit. Maximus opened his mouth to ask something, but Achilles gave him a stern look that said, "Let it go." Mia got up and went to the corner as well, and she made sure to avoid eye contact with anyone. Maximus tried to get some sleep after that, but the throbbing pain from his broken rib kept waking him up. He looked around to see what everyone was up to. Hedger had hung himself upside down with his tail on a hook, which was meant for parachutes, and gone off to sleep again, and Rex was still out cold. As for Mia, she was still in a corner not talking to anyone. Achilles had begun meditating. He used to do this sometimes while training him, and Maximus knew he hated to be disturbed while doing this. But opposite to him, Daedalus was looking out the window with a sad expression on his face, which Maximus found weird, since he expected him to be real happy, returning home with his mind back in control. He asked the old inventor what was wrong. "Ah, Max, it's nothing important. I just wish my son would ride with us inside." Maximus looked outside to see that Daedalus was looking at Icarus flying right beside them. "Why doesn't he?" Maximus asked. Daedalus looked at him sadly and said, "Well, Max, my son does not enjoy the company of people. Not anymore, anyway." Maximus had felt that Icarus was not very friendly, but he thought it was just towards them. But the way Daedalus put it, there was something else going on. "What happened?" he asked. Daedalus looked outside at his son and said, "He wasn't always like this. He was a happy boy while growing up. When he was around 20, Emperor Zeus had called me to Olympus. He was so impressed with my work that he offered me immortality. I requested of him to do the same for my son as well, since I did not want to live forever alone, and the emperor agreed. As years passed, he grew adamant about joining the army. As his father, I did not want a warrior's life for him, but it was his choice, and since that was what he wanted, I did not stand in his way. To help him, I built him those wings, and it gave him a great advantage in his fights. But armed with those wings, he grew arrogant in his skills. He thought he was good enough to take anyone on. Then one day he was flying over the sun god Apollo's territory. Apollo was not happy about this, and he ordered him to leave his airspace or to face his wrath. But instead of flying away, Icarus accepted the sun god's challenge. This was the worst mistake he had ever done. The sun god thrashed him in battle, and in his final attack burned his skin and melted his wings. Icarus fell to the ground and was barely alive when he was returned to Athens. I managed to keep him alive and even mend his wings, but no matter what I tried, his burns would not heal. Now that suit is the only thing that keeps my son safe from excruciating pain." Maximus listened to the whole story and had no idea what to say. Finally he muttered, "I'm sorry." "Ah, well, so am I for giving him those wings in the first place," Daedalus said with a sad smile. "But I just wish he would forgive himself. He was never the same after that. He grew detached from his old life, even from me." Daedalus then continued to stare outside the window. Maximus wished that he hadn't asked what was bothering him. The story had left him feeling like he had eaten some rotten eggs. Maximus also decided to just stare out the window and watch the clouds pass, trying his best to forget about Icarus. A few minutes passed, and that's when Maximus saw something appear on the horizon. He turned to Daedalus and asked, "Is that?" Daedalus was smiling now. "Beautiful, isn't she? You might want to show your friends as well. They wouldn't want to miss this," he said, and Maximus went to do just that. First he woke up Hedger from his nap. "What?" Hedger asked. "Are we under attack again?" "No, but you might want to look out the window," he said. He then went ahead to Mia and said, "Hey, Mia," but she cut him off. "Look, Max, I'm really not in the mood to," she began to say. But she stopped in mid-sentence since she too had just seen what was outside. "Wow," she said, as she went ahead to stare out the window. Because appearing on the horizon was the most amazing city they had ever seen. It was huge, bigger than Thrace or Vulcan's city, and the buildings were tall. A few of them would have easily crossed 50 floors. They were made entirely of metal and glass, both of which reflected the sunlight falling on them, which made the entire city shine. The structures weren't just giant rectangles either. There were constructions of every shape imaginable. One of the towers grew slimmer and slimmer as it went up until the last floor could only hold a single room. Another one was lean all the way to the end, and on top of that was a huge oval. It looked like a blimp was balancing on a pole. There were others too of different shapes and sizes, like a dome with a large telescope coming out of it, and a curvy one that looked like an open book. Almost all of these had obscene amounts of glass and silver on them. The buildings did not have smoking chimneys like in Vulcan, but a lot had multiple antennas and other weird mechanical devices. It also had a very long highway system that ran through the entire city like a giant snake. A few of these roads were so raised and curvy that they looked like they belonged on a roller coaster. The city itself was on a raised platform, and it was surrounded by a sea of green grass as far as the eye could see. And it was surrounded by a perfectly circular wall. The wall itself was not very tall, but it was emitting an enormous energy barrier that covered the entire city like a huge dome. Maximus realized that this was Aegis, but he hadn't expected it to be so big. Aegis was clear enough to see through it, but it had a bluish tinge that made its boundaries easily distinguishable. It made it look like the entire city was encased in one huge snow globe, and surrounded by the green grass and with a clear sky in the background. It looked like a beautifully painted picture. Everyone was staring at the city now. Even Achilles had stopped his meditation to take a peek at this work of art. Odysseus came back from the cockpit again. His smile reappeared on his face as he said, "Well, folks, I present to you Athens." This has been a chapter from Book 1 of the new World Odyssey series, The Soldiers of Ares. Links to the books in the bio. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this chapter, don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe for more. Hit the notification bell so you never miss an upload. See you in the next chapter.